Ukraine?
I did actually. Yeah, I really did.
Hey, how are y'all?
How are you? It's your first time in a different role, isn't it?
I also want to hear some of this. But anyway, yeah, glad y'all was
Thank you for everything you did to get it this far.
And I think we got it. That reminds me, I need to see. I keep trying to open them. It's like,
Thank you.
good, how are you? Good.
Yeah. No, I did 30. Yeah. Oh no, I just that's fine. I've done this one. So let's see.
But anyway.
Fancy that, yeah.
All right, it's 5:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have a wonderful crowd tonight for the March 8th, 2022 meeting of the Escambia Children's Trust Board. For those that are here and would like to speak, we have forms that you can fill out and hand up to Mrs. Greer or Ms. Fournier at the proper time, and you need to fill that out, and you'll be allowed to speak for 3 minutes. Prior to the public comment time. At this time, we're going to take a moment of silence. We had Dr. Northrup mention that there is so much going on in the world right now with children in Ukraine and Russia, so we just want to take a moment of silence to think about them. Okay, thank you so much. And also, we want to recognize that Ms. Appleyard is here. We're so proud to see her back with us, so thank you. At this time, we will move to the adoption of the agenda that was previously sent out. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a Any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the agenda passes. Next, Ms. Emily previously emailed the minutes from the February 8th board meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
A second? Any discussion? All right, all in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now we are going to go to Dr. Smith. He is going to give us our treasurer's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have the Escambia County line of credit. A letter was drafted and sent to the county commissioners, and want to thank our executive director and our legal expert for working together on that and getting that to our county commissioners. So that closes that line of credit out. What the letter indicated was we're thankful for the county providing that for us. We ended up not utilizing the line of credit, and we went ahead into closure with that letter. So thank you very much to our county commissioners for offering that as we were taking off with the trust and getting situated. As far as the benefits, we actually tended to that last last meeting, so I have no further items.
Next on the agenda is the approval of the management and financial report as of January 31st, 2022. And will that be Dr. Smith as well?
So, yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We did report on that in last month's meeting. So what will take place is, for accuracy and up-to-date as possible financial reports, so that will be a lagged month because we'll have checks clearing and so forth. So we will go over, I will bring to the board in April the February financials is the plan. Unless anybody has concern about that, that'll give us accuracy and up-to-date information. So if there are no concerns with that, we'll go forward with that pattern, and that concludes the report.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Next, we will move to the Executive Director report, and we're excited to have Ms. Greer finally here, and she has been busy working this past month. I know she has met with most of us, and she is going to tell us exactly what she's been up to, so go for it.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Okay, so I need to switch gears here and put up the slides.
Okay, the slideshow is not working for the public, unfortunately, so
It'll be available online.
it'll be available online.
Okay. So, but you all can see it, right? Okay, so then we'll just start with the first slide. So the first thing I wanted to do is just give a progress update to everyone to let you know what I've been working on. I've been here, I think, 3 weeks. My first day was February 14th. So first thing we did, which you will hear more about in the policy committee update, is we worked on the policies manual, which will be submitted to you all. You've gotten the draft. You'll get an update on that. I have to thank Meredith for all the great work that she did. She really had a head start. I didn't have that much to do. It was a lot of input, a lot of proofreading, a lot of back and forth, and Patty Hightower. So we all met, and I just have to acknowledge all the great work that was done to make it so much easier for me coming in. The other thing that I've been working on, I've tried to meet individually with each of you, each of the board members. I still need to get with Judge JJ and with Commissioner May, and I would like to have a little more time with Dr. Smith because we were kind of rushed. I bombarded him with checks to sign. And then I have a meeting tomorrow morning with Pastor Wesley. So we're getting to that because I really want to hear what you all have to say as far as what you would like to see from the trust. I did attend the Achieve Escambia Leadership Council meeting. That was wonderful. Got to meet with some of the business leaders in the community, some of the leaders. That was a wonderful experience. What I'm trying to do is tell everybody that where I'd like to start is to do something that people who've known me for a long time know is rare. I want to shut up and listen to what other people have to say. I want to hear what the community thinks the community needs, not what I think the community needs. I haven't been here for 25 years. I remember what it was like to be a kid, but there are things here that didn't exist. I found Navy Federal's campus the other day, so it's a different world in Escambia County. So I'm out there trying to meet and connect. I met with Kimberly Krupa from Community Action Program Committee. She was instrumental in getting some of the momentum behind getting the trust off the ground. She gave me a lot of great background information, lots of ideas. Of course, while she was at Achieve Escambia, produced tons of data, which I will reference in a little bit as we're talking about our plan for moving forward. Also met with Myra Van Hoos, who is now the interim executive director for Achieve Escambia. Talked with her about their vision and how they would like to work with the trust, making no commitments to anyone, just listening and gathering information and trying to relay some of the things that I know about children's services councils and children's trusts throughout Florida and the kinds of things that could be done. Also met with Jen Faber, who is with the Florida Alliance of Children's Trusts and Councils, or Councils and Trusts. Get the acronym backwards all the time. And she was wonderful. She helped us with some information that we were trying to gather regarding a question that we had about the statute and signatures and things of that nature. Met with Julian and Kim McQueen. They were lovely. They have put me in touch with all kinds of people already. And then we also issued our first newsletter. It was small, but it was just an email, a letter from me basically telling the community that I'm here and what I'm trying to do, and just to make sure that everybody has my email address in case they have any questions for me or any comments or feedback, because I really do want to listen and I want input. So, and I've gotten a few responses, which has been wonderful and very welcome. So I think that was well received, and we are going to continue to do newsletters, and we're going to do those on a regular basis because communication is very important to me. We also, and I say we, but really it was Emily, we've also worked on the website to make sure that we're in compliance, because there are some things that we're required by statute to include on our website. So we're working to get all of that posted, and I believe the majority of it is up there. We're waiting for some clarification on when you all's terms started, the exact dates and when they'll end. And so once we have that, we'll have the board roster posted, and I think we'll be complete at that point. So I was excited about that. Also looking at possible office space. Included in my presentation today, which I wish everyone in the audience could see, but it's not that fancy. But I have a staffing plan, a proposed staffing plan, and what I really want to do is try to keep us small so that the majority of the money, as much as possible, can go to programs and go to the community. We don't need a big staff like some of the other programs have in Florida. But we are going to need office space at some point so that people can come in to us and so that we can have meetings and do business. So I've contacted Pensacola State College, I talked with the executive director for the Early Learning Coalition, and he suggested that I look at space in their building because there's some space available there. Mr. Peden suggested that there's some space in Cordova Square, so we're looking at that. I actually got a quote today, thank you for that. And then if the county has space available, or even the school district, if there's some space, because my goal is to get space that will work for us, but that is friendly to the community and accessible to the community. So I'd like to be near a bus route so that if people want to come in, if we want community members to be readers of our proposals, things of that nature, I want us to be accessible to the community. So that's the plan with that. So we're looking for space, and if you have ideas or suggestions, please email me and let me know. So the long-awaited staffing plan. Ta-da. I have full job descriptions for each of these. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's not changing on our side.
Oh, it's not?
I'm saying that for doing.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can. Well, let's see. Let me see if it'll. Oh, okay. So, yeah, there's. Wait a second. Let me see. Okay. Thank you. So, can you all see the staffing plan now? So it's.
And you just need to say next slide, because he's.
Oh, I just need to say next slide. Okay,
He's
thank you,
running
David. So the first person that I think, and these are in order of how I would propose that we hire individuals. The first person we need to hire is an official, full-time, dedicated communications specialist / board clerk, someone who can make sure that all of our documents, because we do have public records that we have to maintain, I would like someone who can shepherd that whole process, make sure that the board has all of the information that you all need, make sure that everything is posted to the community, make sure that our website stays up to date, that things look nice, that they're legible, that they're readable, to get the newsletter out, all of those sorts of things. So, and then of course we're going to have RFPs and invitations to bid that we need to put together. And I'm sure Meredith would welcome some help with the formatting after what we went through with the policies manual. And again, by we, I mean Meredith, because she did the formatting. So a communications specialist, board clerk, a finance director. We have Anglin CPA, which I have to give a shout out to Ryan. I so appreciate all the help that they have given us. But I would like to have someone internally, because especially as we start making awards, we're going to have to monitor the funded agencies. We're going to have to do a fiscal monitoring and a programmatic monitoring to make sure that they are in compliance. And then, of course, we'll have things that we need to do internally. And for those who are familiar with internal controls and what that means, it's basically a system of checks and balances to make sure that no one person controls a dollar all the way through the system, that you've got someone who sees the transactions on both sides. You've got different people who have different roles. So it's a separation of duties, and that's referred to as internal control. So we want to make sure that that is very strong and that that is built into the process from the very beginning. The next person is the program director. Once we have our needs assessment done, which I will also talk about in just a few minutes, once we have our needs assessment completed, then we'll start putting out the RFPs asking for proposals for projects that we could fund. And we're going to need someone who has a strong background in children's services work, in education, early childhood development, someone who will be able to give guidance to the programs, who can help with the programmatic monitoring, the program side of the funding. So the program director is another position. And then I have listed performance and evaluation manager. That could potentially be an externally contracted person, but there's some benefit to having someone internally as well, because then you can build in metrics into your RFP process. You have someone who can do workshops for potential applicants if they aren't familiar with how to set up objectives and how to design measurable objectives so that you get outcomes that you can measure. So I would like to have someone in that role, because I think it is critical that we have baseline data for anything that we're going to do, and then we need to be able to measure our success or our failure, because if something's not working, we need to be able to identify what's not working so that we can improve it or stop it or redirect it. So that, to me, is a very important piece. So I put that role down here, but as I said, if it turns out to be more cost-effective to outsource that, then we could certainly look at that. But that is the last piece that I put on here, because if we can save money by not hiring somebody immediately, that would be my preference, because again, I want to try to get as much money out to the community as we can, and I'm sure that the board shares that idea too. Next slide, please. Is it on the next slide for you all? Okay. Mine's different. So the organizational chart, just so you could see how it would lay out, I don't think we necessarily need a chain of command and a bunch of layers. So it would just be the board of directors, then myself, then the 4 staff members. And I also included, for the personnel cost categories from the trim line item budget, I put what was budgeted in there versus what the estimated cost for these positions would be. And just based on this, and it does include 25% roughly for benefits, because we don't have a benefits plan completely laid out yet. So just using 25% as a ballpark, we still are coming in significantly under budget, particularly on the programmatic side. So I think that's always good, because it gives us a little bit of wiggle room in case we get someone who is incredibly qualified and we would want to go a little into the range. So that was my goal with that. And again, I do have individual job descriptions that I can distribute to the board for anyone who's interested in seeing that. And Mr. Peden, as the chair of the personnel committee, he's already seen those. So we do have them already available for you. So any questions on any of that?
Hey, this is Tori. 2 things. I have looked at the website and it looks great.
Thank you.
Thank you, both of you guys. I've been checking it out. And I would like to see the job descriptions, please.
Okay.
Thank
Yes,
you.
absolutely. I'd be happy to send them to all of you, and then you can look at them or not look at them at your convenience. So I probably should have just offered that. So I've been bombarding you with paperwork. I apologize. So then, next steps, next slide, please. So the immediate next steps, like what I'm going to start working on tomorrow, there is in statute a requirement that all the money that leaves the trust accounts be paid via check, meaning a paper check, with 2 signatures. And those 2 signatures can be the board chair and the board treasurer or the executive director, but you need a combination of those 2. So, or a combination of those 3 with 2 signatures on everything that goes out. That is not very efficient, especially when it comes to payroll. Or, for example, paying your payroll taxes, which you cannot remit by paper check. So the statute is outdated. So we polled our fellow children's trusts and councils. That was what I had worked with Jen Faber from FACT on. And basically what they all said was, not in so many words, they told us their process that revealed that they all just ignore that statute. We're not comfortable doing that. And I knew that they did because I worked for one of the largest children's trusts in Palm Beach County, and I said, I know we were paid through direct deposit, and I know that we paid all of our programs through electronic funds transfer, or ACH, when they got their awards. So they basically said, yes, this is how we do it, but there was no explanation as to how they managed to get around the statute. Did you get an opinion from the Attorney General? Is there a statute that we haven't been able to find? How are you doing this? So Stephanie and, or Ms. White and Meredith and I talked. Stephanie's okay. I'm sorry. We all talked, and what we're going to do is submit a request for an Attorney General opinion on electronic payment. So that obviously doesn't change the statute, but at least it gives us something to fall back on, and we can show that we did our due diligence. So that's something, it's prepared to go. We have a resolution that'll come before the board because we do need the board's authorization to request an opinion. So that is prepared, it's ready to go out. So if the board approves that when you get to action items, that's going to go out tomorrow. The next thing is I do need to meet with the remaining board members. You all are so incredibly busy, so I really do appreciate your time. And there are, of course, plenty of other community leaders that I need to meet with, and so we're scheduling all sorts of things. My calendar looks like I'm a crazy person, but I love it, so I'm having so much fun. It's amazing. Every day that I go out and meet with somebody, I see something else that wasn't here 25 years ago. It's crazy. New roads even, like things that used to not go through now do, and things that used to go through don't. So I've had a great time. Thank goodness for GPS. We're also going to address the banking matters. The other resolution that will come before you is to authorize me to be on the bank account and to get a purchase card. So, and then along with that, you're going to see the policies that the policy committee will put forth, which put some restrictions around what I can and can't do and levels for which I can sign versus 2 board members. So we're trying to get all those protocols in place. So we need to get me set up as a signer and get a purchase card so that I can do things like get a phone so that people can reach me. And then I also had a conversation that I will brief you all with, especially Dr. Smith and Stephanie, on the positive pay, because we need some fraud protection. We need some protocols in place to make sure that our money is protected, because as checks go out, once our checking account number is out in the world, then it's vulnerable. And so we want to look at that. And of course, I'll be bringing this back to the board for a more formal motion, but just so that you know what's going on behind the scenes. I've had conversations, and I think we should look at moving some of the money out of the checking account and putting it into a holding account, perhaps a money market account where it can earn a little bit of interest, and then move it over as we need to spend it so that it's protected. So you'll hear more about that. I'm stealing my own thunder because there's nothing more exciting than a finance conversation. So that's something else that we're working on. The other thing that is before you for approval is an RFP. I don't think, and I've talked to, for all of those of you who I've talked to one-on-one, you've already heard my spiel on this. There's so much great data already available, and there are 2 massive needs assessments that have already been done for Escambia County, one by Healthy Escarosa and one by Achieve Escambia. And then there's just reams of data available through the school district, through the county, through FDLE, through the judicial system. So rather than spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to have someone come in and do focus groups, only to discover that the other needs assessments are accurate, I would like to take those at their word and have someone respond to an RFP who is a researcher who does not have a vested interest in getting funding, because of course, you're going to see things through your own lens. So I would like to have someone who certifies that they will not be applying for programmatic funding, to look at the data and to give us a comprehensive report of all of the data that's out there and help us put this into one document that is easy to read so that we can release it to the community so everyone knows this is what the landscape of children's well-being and welfare looks like in Escambia County as of this date. Then we can get together, the board could have a workshop and develop a strategic plan based on real data. Then we also have baseline data that we can measure our progress against, because I think it's super important that we constantly show the taxpayers and the voters what we're doing with the money and how it impacts everyone, how children's well-being impacts everyone, even people whose children are already grown or who didn't have children or who are just here for a short time because they're in the military, but they own homes here. I want to make sure that we can show a return on investment and how that ultimately affects the workforce. So those are the kinds of things that I feel very strongly about, and I would like to have that RFP out tomorrow so that we can get a researcher in here to pull all that data together. It's almost like for those who've suffered through this in higher education, those of us with higher degrees know what a literature review is. That's kind of what we're looking at here. I don't need someone to do statistical analyses. I need them to say, here's what the statistics mean, here's what this says. And then if we can get them to point us to some things that have worked, some best practices, some model programs that we can look towards, even better. So you'll have that on the action item list as well. And I believe I sent out the RFP. So if you've had a chance to look at it, I apologize, my email, there was a day where I was switching computers. They were putting me onto a new laptop, and apparently lots of emails didn't go out. So I don't know what you got and what you didn't, so I apologize for that, but I hope that you got that. The other 2 things that I would like to do as immediate next steps is to advertise the first 2 positions. It is so difficult to hire right now. It is such a competitive market for employees. So I would like to get that finalized and start advertising, at least for the communication specialist and hopefully for the director of finance as well. And then, of course, I would like to identify office space so that I can bring a lease for the board's consideration to the April meeting. Next slide, please. And then, so that we don't run out of things to do, I have an additional to-do items list. We need to schedule a strategic planning workshop or retreat with the board. That would, of course, be after we get back the RFPs and the study that will be done. I'm very optimistic, I'm probably crazy, but I'm hoping that won't take more than a month to pull all that data together and produce a report, maybe 2 months at most. But I would like to get something on the calendar once we have a contracted agency to do the needs. I'm calling it a needs assessment. It's an assessment of needs assessments, basically. But once that is done, then we can start moving. And I'd like to go ahead and get something on your calendars, because I know it's difficult to get a large chunk of time. But this is really important, and this will drive our work for the next 5 years. So there's that, and then I also understand that there was funding for a reception that got canceled because of COVID, and so I would like to plan something and invite the community to come in, because I know people have lots of questions about what we're doing and when money is going to be released and all of that. So I would like to try to pull something together and arrange that. I'd also like to look at moving the website and the newsletter to different platforms so that they're a little more user-friendly and so that we can do more with those programs, with those platforms. So when we get the communication specialist, that's the first thing that I will charge that person with doing, because I believe in hiring really smart people who are way smarter than me and let them do what they're good at. So that's the plan for the website and the newsletter. We also have a quarterly report that's coming due to the county, which is why I would really love to have a finance director on board, because otherwise Ryan's going to hate me, because we need to get something to the county. The first one will not be bad because we really have not spent any of the money. So, but we do need to be cognizant of the fact that that's due, I believe, next month. Then the other thing is I would like to start exploring the idea of doing an RFP for a capacity building grant. I don't know if that's something that the board would be open to, but I will say that in the conversations that I've already had throughout the community, I'm hearing a lot about people have gotten some CARES Act money, and so they seem to have good resources right now for some of the programming that they're doing. But what seems to be missing is capacity. People have buildings that are in terrible shape. They need buses to transport children. They need locks. They need computers. They need tangible items that many funders will not support. So I would like to put something together for the board to consider, because that's something that we could roll out even without a program director, because there's no real programming behind it. We just have to decide who would be eligible, what kinds of services they have to provide that benefit children, and then perhaps put a cap on how much they could apply for, and if there are certain things that would be ineligible for funding. And that's something that we could roll out to the community relatively quickly and get people some things that they really desperately need right now, and that would complement the CARES Act funding, which will eventually go away, and then our program funding will be super important. So that was a lot to say. So thank you for this opportunity. I have to say I am so honored to be here and to have this position and to work with you all. I could not ask for a better board. Everybody has been just so kind. So does anyone have any questions?
I don't actually know if you're the right one to ask, but did we budget for a needs assessment? It was my recollection that we had agreed we didn't need a needs assessment, and we had a strategic workshop about where we were going to start. So I just didn't know if I mean, I'm not that I disagree with combining the needs assessments.
I don't have, does anyone know that off the top of their head?
We decided we didn't need a needs assessment.
Yeah,
So I didn't.
we were waiting on studies and needs assessments. Because the assessment and the needs was when we put out the vote. It's kind of what we said. So I kind of remember that conversation.
And I think it's my understanding, certainly Tammy, correct me if I'm wrong, I have met with Ms. Greer to just discuss things in general. This was one of the issues that came up, in that she is not proposing doing an additional needs assessment. What her proposal is involved with is looking at the data that we've already gathered and has been gathered through other organizations in the community in the form of needs assessments, compiling all of that information and kind of structuring a 1, 2, 3, 4 order that would be based on both need prioritization, but also kind of trying to identify the low-hanging fruit, if you will, that we could get some things started as a board and as an entity that will be beneficial. Certainly will be addressing those needs, but right now, rather than trying to, in a proverbial sense, eat the whole elephant at once, we try to identify where can we begin expending some of these revenues and these funds that are needed in the community that will be beneficial, impactful in things, but not creating yet another needs assessment.
I appreciate that. I understood her explanation. We're talking about putting out an RFP, and so I'm just asking what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
and that's my
Let's
question,
table-
Tammy.
let's table
Are we
this.
talking about putting out an RFP for a consultant to tell us about developing a capacity grant? Or are we just saying that we're going to look at the existing data and put out a capacity building grant?
The two are separate. So the capacity building grant is not even really on the table at this point. That was just an idea that I wanted to give you all a heads up that I would like to explore with the board, but that is not even on the table formally. The RFP that is on the agenda for a vote, and thank you, I did not realize that conversation had occurred. So I'm playing catch up, so I apologize. But your point is well taken, and that really is why I didn't want to do a needs assessment, because I do think that the data is there. It is all there. What I'm proposing is to do an RFP for not a lot of money, that could just hire somebody who would basically be, as Commissioner May said, a consultant that could come in and just pull all this together. It's something that we could certainly do, that the board could get together and spend half a day looking at all of this and putting it together and trying to weigh what would be the best use of the funds. So it's really just up to you all as to whether or not you would rather take your time to go through that, and then after that, then come up with a strategic plan for how we're going to address those issues, versus having someone external come in and hand you a report that you can then use, that kind of gathers all that for you. So and I'm happy either way.
Judge, I took a look at the budget from some prior meeting, and there really is not a line item that fits what this would cost to do a examination of existing needs assessments. There's something called capacity building and technical assistance, but I felt like that was more generated toward the community. There is a line item for additional community input at 58 grand, but I think that may have been some other idea. It wasn't really. So I don't see anything that this could be pigeonholed into. There is, of course, the big $8.6 million that's dedicated to services to providers. But I think it might require looking at the budget, doing an adjustment to find something for this. I think you're asking a good question, because I don't think it was contemplated in our budget design.
Tammy, is this something you could do, that you would have the ability to do without putting it out? And that you would feel comfortable doing?
Well, I could do it. It would not happen as quickly as if we had somebody do it from the outside. I mean, obviously. But I could pull it together, and I would need to work very closely with a lot of you, because I would not feel comfortable doing it in a vacuum, because I may not even know where all the data points are necessarily that we need. But I could certainly take a crack at it, and
Right.
then.
Yeah, I mean, for me, for my vote,
I mean-
now, I'm only one. I mean,
Yeah.
if
No, but-
there's a consultant for the interpretation of the already collected data, that's one thing. There was a need assessment and ask of the voters, and, that need has already been presented and voted
Okay.
upon, so
Yeah.
I would
Let's
deal with
table
that.
this discussion, because we're supposed to vote on this in a few minutes.
Okay.
So this is just your report, and we'll come back to this
Okay.
discussion as to whether or not we should go forward with it. Is that okay, Commissioner May?
Well, I mean, I have no choice now. I mean,
I
I'll
just
lose my
wanna-
thought.
I just want to save the discussion part for the actual items, and we can discuss it then.
I have a question on the executive director's report regarding the proposed lease, because you're talking about presenting it at the April meeting. I would encourage you to think about the end game more than where we are today. I know that leases change from time to time, but usually you're gonna have to make an obligation probably for some time period. And if we're just a couple of offices, it's probably not gonna meet the needs of the trust for the 2 to 3, 4, 5 years that you might want to be thinking down the road. You've experienced what other trusts use. They're fairly well-designed, lots of capacity. Programs can present. There's room for staff. There's room for people to come in and out of. Typically, the environment might be used by other community projects that the trust conceived themselves giving back in the community, just in a place that people can meet. So I would just encourage you to think larger than smaller.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on Mrs. Greer's report? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, next let's move to the Policy Committee report. Ms. Hightower?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the Policy Committee met prior to this meeting. I think all of you received a copy of the policy manual that I want to say kudos to both our attorney, Ms. Bush, and to our new executive director. We have been working on this, and our Policy Committee had asked Ms. Bush to spearhead this, but she was the one with the most knowledge about all of the issues involved. And so at the meeting, we reviewed the document, and we did have a few changes. I think some of you had sent some suggestions that were incorporated. And so before I make the recommendation from the committee, I'd like for Meredith to go through those changes so that you're all aware of it before I make the recommendation from the board that we adopt it. So, Madam Chair, if you don't mind.
Meredith? Ms.
Sure.
Bush?
Thank you, Ms. Hightower. So some of this is throughout the document, and then there were some specifics. But throughout the document, a determination was made to change anywhere that it said chairman or chairwoman to just chair. There are places where it said the trust, which has been replaced with Escambia County in the draft. That was from a find and replace that accidentally took out places that should actually say Escambia County and replaced it with the trust, so that'll be corrected. Similarly, places where the trust should be replaced with the acronym ECT. The ethics portion of the policy was duplicated both in the Code of Ethics section and in the Human Resources section. So now it's been removed from the Human Resources section, and on page 86, rather than the ethics and standards of conduct being repeated, it simply says it refers to the standards of conduct outlined in the adopted ECT Code of Ethics, which is earlier in the policy. On page 25 in the public records section, there's been an addition that each member of the ECT and each employee has a duty to preserve and retain all documents or communications meeting the definition of public record and to promptly transfer those records to the custody of ECT. And then in the holiday schedule on page 68, there's an addition to reference the Escambia County Board of County Commissioners published holiday schedule rather than simply the published holiday schedule. And then one other change would be in places where it referenced chief executive officer to replace that with executive director. There are a couple periods and
one other thing had to do with the ethics officer.
Oh, that in the ethics position, in the ethics portion, that the executive director will serve as the ethics officer. And that was a change that is actually reflected when it was in the HR policy, but wasn't in the Code of Ethics, because the Personnel Committee had went through the HR policy line by line and caught that, but it didn't carry over. So that'll be changed in the actual Code of Ethics section. And beyond that, I'm open to any other input.
I have a question, and I'm going to acknowledge having not read through all 93 pages or whatever there. My question is related. I know a large part of this relates to Florida statute and references Florida statute, and then goes on to explain statutes. I'm just one of the other boards that I'm involved with has similar existence and is guided by a lot of the similar types of things. And what was decided in that other board, not that we need to do things exactly by any means, but the conundrum that we were trying to avoid there and would like why it makes sense to avoid here is us putting things into writing in our policies that then the Florida statutes change, and now our policies has to be reviewed continuously to make sure that our change keeps up with that statute rather than just referencing Florida, will comply with Florida statute and reference the statute. And that type of thing. And the other benefit of that is that it condenses our policy and procedures down considerably as well. And I just raised that question certainly to the judges and attorneys and others, and yourself certainly as well. I'm just raising that question.
So, I mean, it's up to you. You can have it simply cite, or have a statement that it's the policy of the trust to abide by Florida statutes. Of course, then, where that's outlined for trust employees or trust board members to read, they would have to refer back to the statutes. So it is in the ethics section, which I believe was taken from Escambia County. It tracks and, reiterates what the statute says.
Good points. I asked that many times at the school board level about why we have to have statutes. Oftentimes, the statute also makes it clear that when it's changed, then we have changed it. I can't say specifically here, but sometimes we use the statute reference instead of having to write the statute out. So, if we get to a point with the new communication specialist so that we could put our policies online and that statute could be hyperlinked so that it would immediately be visible, then we might could consider that. But right now, I think because we're all getting used to this, it would be better to have as much information in the policies at this point as possible. I do believe shorter is better. I'm with you on that.
Anyone else have questions on the policies? Okay, thank you, Mrs. Hightower.
So do you want me to make the recommendation now?
You can make the recommendation, we'll vote on it in a few minutes.
By direction of the policy committee, we recommend the adoption of the policy manual that was presented, is it draft 5 or 6? Okay. The last one I had was 5. I just wanted to make sure I had the most up to date.
Thank you. All right, so now we're going to go to the action items for approval. Our first, did we vote on that first? My parliamentarians, when we vote on that, we don't vote that on the action items?
Well, actually, if I might say, where we've got policy, these 3 things are contained within the entire policy book, so if we vote on the policy as a whole, we won't have to take up those individually.
Okay. So do you vote on that now?
That was the recommendation
Okay,
from
so
the
that's
committee.
recommendation.
Pat, is that your motion for all 3?
Yeah, the recommendation was that we accept the policy manual, and it covers more than just personnel, procurement, and fiscal. It was sent to you as a separate document.
All right. Well, no, I second.
Okay.
Any discussion on the policies? More discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the policy manual passes. Thank you, Meredith, so much. We appreciate your help. All right, so now we'll go to the action items for approval. Our first is our needs assessment consultant RFP. Is there a motion is there a motion on this?
I move that we put out the RFP for a needs assessment consultant.
A second.
Any more discussion?
I would like to discuss. And again, I'm not necessarily opposed to it but at the same time too, I guess I'm just trying to figure out where we all are, because I think unanimously we said we didn't need a new needs assessment. I appreciate this is an assessment of the needs assessment, but we had a full day of strategic planning that we spent a lot of time talking about what our priorities were, and I thought we had a vision, and now it just sounded like we were talking about basically starting over. So I'm just trying to figure out where we are.
I just, my only comment is I think it's a good idea because of the volume, and I think it's really smart to hire someone who has the capacity to do the work with probably no conflict of interest. I hope we're going to address that. But all we're doing is soliciting a response, makes no commitment of an obligation to contract. We would see a pricing, and we could determine from that pricing whether we wanted to move budget to pay for that work. So the work of putting the RFP out is to find out what the market will tell us it would cost to do that kind of work. We would also get to see their proposed process, and we may discover from their proposed process that it doesn't do what we want it to do, and we might reject proposals. So I think doing the RFP is it's a good idea to move this work out and see what we can get from it, because there are folks who do this for a living, and I think we get a good product.
My thoughts were, if you look at the statute, 125.901 Part B, it says, immediately after the members are appointed, you should identify and assess the needs of the children in the county, which we've determined. We know the needs. We have SCIs, we have FDLE, we have, Gulf Coast Kids House has needs on their website. Everyone has needs on their website. But as, they're all they're all objective, but there's so many different out there. We have to focus on, certain ones. And so how do we know which ones to focus on when there's so many different needs assessments out there? So I think for me, when I was looking at that statute and I have to write a letter to the county, I was overwhelmed because I didn't know who to pull from, who not to pull from, and what to do. So just having an overview would be helpful, I think.
So I think you just answered my question, and although this sounds like an obvious question, what is the purpose of the needs assessment? So I'm going to attempt to answer my own question, just for sake of clarity. So if I'm understanding correctly, what we want to do is take all the information that we have in the community, narrow it down so it's focused and succinct and pointed. Therefore, then we can move forward with strategic planning. Am I correct on that? Okay.
And Tim, I would respond, and certainly I'll be supportive of what we want. But initially, when we did the DAO session or group session, when we came up with the assessment, we said we couldn't focus on everything, and we unanimously came up with the things that we were, as a group, we're going to focus on. And so that was a decision that was made when we did this. And so if the consultant is to come out to help us refine that, well, that's one thing. But if it's to take all of the needs assessments and put it in to help us prioritize, I agree with the good judge. We've already done that. I mean, in our DAO session with Ted. And so I'm fine with everywhere we go, but we did waste a half a day in 2 days, and we said we can't address everything. These are the things that we would address. And so in my mind, those things were identified at the Woodland Center. And agreed upon, not only identified, but they were agreed upon.
So perhaps then in the strategic planning process, that's a phase of it where we take the needs from that retreat and we build upon that. Throwing that out there as a
right. I mean,
thought.
And that may very well, and this may be very well needed. And I'll take that advice of our professionals to tell us which way to go. But in my mind, we identified it. Not necessarily my opinion, but it was the unanimous opinion of what we had. And so I think we all each had individual ideas of what we thought the trust would be, but we came to a consensus of what we would try to accomplish in the first 12 months of the trust. And so I think that if we veer from that, then we were kind of taking a different direction in which we exactly. So and I would like to, I'm good with consultants, but I'm certainly I want more money for direct services. And so I argue all the time that the assessment was done before the vote, and the promise was made before the vote. And so that's what we have to live toward. But if this is to refine it, to help us with measurements and outcomes, okay, I get that. But if it's to have a consultant to tell me what they have, to take the information of all these other organizations or data and to tell us what should be prioritized, then I certainly would be opposed to that, because I think we've already prioritized it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Hightower?
I guess I have a question as well. My understanding from what you were saying was that it would have established a baseline for us. Yes, we did establish or what we thought would be our priorities, but we don't know where we are at this moment. Even some of those assessments that have been done were done prior to COVID. And so I would like to see us use this person and the data as they pull everything together, because I know we had a presentation at Rotary, and there's some additional information from another group that wasn't mentioned that might be beneficial to include in this. But I think from just the standpoint of being able to, as Walter said, see we may not be able to afford what's out there, but more importantly, to be able to have somebody help us establish where is this baseline, where is it that we're going to start on those things that we decided were the first things.
Anybody else? All right, we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Any abstained?
Can't abstain.
Okay, can't abstain. Thank you, parliamentarian.
Let me be clear what the motion is, just to put out an RFQ, because we don't have a budget set or anything, right? So we're going to wait till it comes back and then set the budget, is what I'm hearing on this motion?
I listened to Walter. What we're doing is putting it out. When we see what the budget is, we'll decide at that point whether we think it's worth doing that for that much money. Is that right, Walter?
Right. And so
I think the document itself clearly encourages market pricing and says don't go beyond, and we're limited, and so it gives guidance to the consultant not to overdo it either. So I think we'll get a realistic look at what the potential product could be. I commented in the request for comments that I thought that the scoring could have attributed more points toward their method or their process that they're going to use, because I think that would tell us the right person to do it. But I understand the response and why we maybe didn't highlight that. So it'll be interesting to see what we get. Another technique that I didn't even think about, but I'm glad Commissioner brought it up, is that we did have that other workshop. We did have results from that. We could put that in the solicitation document and guide them toward the metrics that would support that, and that way it dovetails the two efforts together.
And certainly I concur with that, but I will hope that this board would take in consideration the taxpayers don't like consultants and a lot of money being spent on admin. I mean, this vote was achieved simply by people wanting direct services for children. And so when the last result should be consultants. When we have the ability to do it in-house and we have the data already present, I don't think we ought to be hiring consultants. And so I look forward to whatever response we get. And Tim, I probably would have voted with you until we got it in, but I mean, I certainly am not going to be very supportive of a consultant.
All right, so our next, we already did our policy action item. Resolution 2022-01 is our next action item, which was sent out, and that basically states that allows Mrs. Greer to be on the bank and to be able to sign on behalf of the trust, to sign, execute, and deliver checks or orders on behalf of the company in respect to the operations. It is applied to the Hancock Whitney Bank for purchasing card facility with a spending limit of $5,000, and the bank is authorized to mail separately the user ID and password and purchasing card to the attention of Tammy Greer at the address of the company recorded with the bank. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
I move approval of Resolution 2022-01.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so Resolution 2022-01 passes. The next is Resolution 2022-02, which you all also received, and this is to be able to submit a letter to the Attorney General's office concerning the use of checks, and if we have to have two signatures on an actual check, or if we can use some other form of payment. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2022-02?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Hightower?
I just want to say thank you for all the documentation that we had provided here. I thought that was very beneficial, and thank you for the work you did.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now the action item for approval next is the staffing plan for your, let's see, I wrote it down on the back of this sheet. So you want us to approve to be able to hire the communication specialist and the finance director. Do you want us to approve the program director as well, or just stop at the first two? Okay, is there any discussion on the staffing plan or motion that someone would like to make?
If discussion, I would like to. Okay.
Is there a motion?
I'm not sure, I think I want to make a motion that we approve the staffing plan.
Second. for
Any
this.
discussion on that? The staffing plan was all 4 offices.
Okay, so my question is, when we look at our administrative costs, do we have a guideline for what percentage of revenues we are going to expend for administrative functions and positions and so forth? And I don't believe as a board we've really had that discussion in as far as a specific percentage.
Could we get that slide back up with the staffing
Thank you,
plan?
Judge. That's just what I was going to ask.
Is it a total .25, Tammy? Is that the maximum .25 of our total budget for admin costs? A bit? Oh, I'm sorry.
So my follow-up question on that too, is there an industry, in essence, an industry standard? So, and I don't know the answer to that question.
So I'm not sure off the top of my head what the percentage would be for the personnel, but then there are other costs that get calculated into an overall admin cost. And I can tell you that in the nonprofit world, and when you look at things like Charity Navigator and things like that, and for foundations, you generally, the highest you would go is 25%. The sweet spot seems to be about 15%. Below that, you get pretty lean. But again, it also takes into account the office space that is for the administrative personnel, the overhead associated with having them there. So it's a bigger calculation than just the actual salary and benefits cost. So I could probably figure that out once I know how much our space will cost, which is why I'm trying to keep the cost of the space that we're looking at to a minimum. But my goal is to keep it at 15% or under.
Okay.
In the budget that I referenced earlier, there's an administrative personnel line item for $350,100. And then there's also a program personnel line item for $291,750.
And then,
was less than those two.
significantly.
Yes.
and the other question, or the other point as well, is the 3%, I believe, of the amount that we are to receive that is going to be kept by the property appraiser's office. And does that get calculated into our overhead, or just raising that for consideration? Because there's 3% right off the top that is beyond our budget or control or whatever. That's just,
That would be admin.
Any more discussion on the staffing plan?
So, so in the numbers that were presented, all the positions were accounted for in those 2 numbers, okay? And then we would be dropping off service with the finance director.
Potentially, because we still need the internal controls. So for example, we may need to outsource the payroll function, because you don't want someone calculating the payroll and doing all the benefits and then also entering the payroll and then presenting it for signature. You need some type of
Okay.
division of duties there. But it would certainly stand to decrease
Okay.
the role of the external accounting firm.
Okay, so then with the staffing plan, we're approving all the positions, but then you were just asking to move forward with the actual hiring of the communications and the finance. And then, am I assuming correctly that the others are dictated by need, but they're on the staffing book, so as needed, then you're able to move forward accordingly?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, we have a motion, a second on the table to approve the staffing plan. Any more discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the staffing plan passes. The next on the agenda is any new business. Is there any new business that needs to be discussed? Mr. Walter.
Yes, it is a hard day for me. But I have delivered to the chair and to Tammy my resignation letter from the trust. It is not a resignation by DCF. It is only a delegation. Melissa Sidoti is in the audience. Melissa, stand up. Everybody see Melissa at other meetings? Yay. Melissa is not new to Escambia County. She's lived here for how long, Melissa?
Oh, just practically my whole life.
Practically her whole life. And she is my local circuit community development administrator. And she covers the 4 counties to include all of Circuit 1. I also have recently been gifted from our agency more of a coverage area. We've done some realignment at DCF, and now I cover 20 more counties over to Daytona Beach. So I have the I have the Northeast and the Northwest regions. So I now have 56 of Florida's 67 counties. So I have 3 other CCDAs. I have the Alachua CSC now on my schedule. Good thing is that's already been delegated. I don't have to sit at that one. So yes, lots of fun. But it has been fun. I've enjoyed it. And I said at the bottom of our letter, I'll read it to you. I have enjoyed being involved in both the development process as well as the initial actions of the Escambia Children's Trust. Under Stephanie White's leadership, the Trust is making great strides, and I'm looking forward to cheering you all on in your accomplishments. So, thank you.
Well, the good news is that we can now call you and we can go to lunch or get coffee with you, so.
And this is effective at the next board meeting, so Judge, you'll have to swear Miss Melissa in when the next board meeting happens.
I'll bring my robe.
All right, now it's time for public comment, and if anyone would like to speak, you have forms to fill out, and you can please bring that up, and we'll give you 3 minutes to speak, so if anyone has time to talk. And welcome, Ms. Krupa, or Dr. Krupa.
Good evening, everyone, and congratulations, Tammy. I just wanted to offer my support for everything that you said. It was brilliant. And just clarify one point and maybe just put an ask out there of you all, which is to address summer learning and specifically summer learning loss. We can probably count on one hand how many agencies receive COVID dollars. And at the same time, summer learning loss has never been worse. We all know we just lost 6 percentage points in kindergarten readiness, and a lot of that can be attributed to not just the COVID learning loss, but summer specifically. Huge gaps in this county in summer programs, especially on the west side and north of 9 Mile Road. So I would urge you to consider putting those dollars on the street to address 2022 summer learning loss. And just underscoring your comments, Tammy, and observations about capacity building. I know for the agency that I now represent at Community Action, that's a number 1 and front and center to so much of the work is training the adults to better serve the kids. So A+ and congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Krupa. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Oh, Mr. Dogan.
Good evening. Thank you all, to the chairman and to the board, and welcome, Tammy. My name is Reggie Dogan. I am the program director for the Studer Community Institute. And I just wanted to, first of all, thank you all for this opportunity, and just want to let you know that we have done a large amount of research, a lot of data, and I think you all have used some of that data. So If there is any questions that you have that's related to assessments, we have quite a bit of data. Our mission, of course, is to improve the quality of life for everyone in Escambia County, and we do that through early brain development. And our focus is on parents, it's on children 0 to 3, and our goal is to make Pensacola become America's first early learning city. And we have a variety of, I think, aggressive and important programs that we have work with hospitals and schools and with parents, and where I actually go out in the community and talk to parents. And I find parents who say they're excited that I come to see them because they didn't know that it's important to talk to their children, to engage with their children. So we are what I call boots on the ground, and we go out in the community, and our goal again is to make Pensacola a better place by improving our community. So if there's anything that we can offer from Student Community Institute, don't hesitate to call us, because we are there, we are ready, available. We have the data, you've used it before, and we still have it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Dogan.
Reggie, thanks. We were out with Stephanie's dad in Marina Court, so at the playground. So congratulations to, yeah, it was a good deal. It was great to be out there.
All right, hearing no more comments, that will conclude public forum. And before we adjourn, I'd like to thank everyone for their hard work, especially Ms. Hightower and Ms. Greer and Ms. Bush, especially for all your hard work on the policies. Thank you so much. And we will miss you, Walter. So thank you. Our next board meeting is April the 12th, and that's it. Is there a motion to adjourn? Second? All right, all in favor? Aye.